All right, John, we're rolling.
How much more?
Right. And you said you're okay with this just being your slides?
Yeah.
And your voice in the background?
Yes, sir, I am.
Cool.
Really fine with that.
But you're so putty.
I am a good-looking man.
All right, we got it going, John.
Thanks, sir. All right, everybody, welcome back for the second half of the forensic analysis talk. Quick review, refresher where we left off. We talked about the importance of, or the value in that old adage about garbage in equals garbage out. So what kind of what we're advocating for, at least I'm advocating for here in this talk, is to kind of make the help smarten up the front end of these examinations and analysis by providing enough information up front to allow the folks that are doing the heavy lifting be able to do that much more effectively and efficiently. Talking about those bad outcomes, investigators and clients and customers can be disappointed. A lot of times they expect us to hand them the case on a silver platter because that's just what we do, right? You think that anything that has been involved with digital evidence or a digital device or widget of any kind, it's got to have that smoking gun on it. And we all know that's probably not the case in every instance. Forces us into oftentimes this unfocused and needless effort on our part, which we don't have time to do because of that huge data volume, case backlog, short-staffed, underfunded, all that good stuff. So we've got those problems as well. Wasting that valuable time and resources. So let's talk about those specific forensic questions a little bit more. Oftentimes, those investigative legal questions that we start this with, all right, don't really translate well as far as we're concerned, and we're going to talk about defining or designing an examination plan or process. So how do we make that actionable? All right, and these forensic questions kind of bridge that gap, help us get from that, the thought process of the investigator and the lawyers over to something we can actually convert into something we can use. So how do we take those and transfer that or frame that into some kind of actionable examination method? In forensic science, you've ever heard of these guys, Inman and Rudin? Probably not. All right. Well, there's this thing called the Inman and Rudin paradigm in forensic science. You guys heard anything about like class or individual characteristics or anything? Heard of that? All right. You've probably seen the product of this and maybe not know what it's from. All right. But all forensic sciences, all forensic disciplines tend to want to answer this kind of core set of questions. All right. And those questions can be broken down into identification, classification / individualization, association, and then reconstruction. So identification, what is this thing? What is the nature of this object? What is it? Identifying it. For example, you may think in conventional science like forensic chemists may be involved in kind of determining what that brown powder substance is. All right? Our forensic tools, such as FTK, do that as well. All right? Automatically for us. They will categorize and identify the files on that particular device. They may know how forensic software identifies a file.
The very first couple of bits, typically.
The header. Exactly right. Does not pay much attention to that file extension. All right? Actually identifies it by the file header. So we're talking about classification. We're basically kind of talking about coming from a common origin. In other words, we're going to put something into a group. All right, so what does that actually mean? Well, this is that class characteristics I talked about a second ago. So, for example, you talk about firearms. I mean, you guys like guns? Right?
Hey, the Glock.
The Glock.
The 21, right?
Yeah.
So it's 45. Well, it's 45, so it's...
Yeah, I think so.
Shit.
Their Glockenspiel. All right, there you go. Good gun. All right, so Glocks have a unique barrel. Okay? Glocks have a unique barrel. Okay, you can tell a Glock a lot of times from other, used to be able to back in my day, from other handguns in a lot of respects because they don't really have lands and grooves. All right? You guys didn't know that. They have heptagonal or octagonal rifling in it. So there's no really lands and grooves like you'd see on a traditional firearm. So oftentimes we can tell, all right, by the markings on the bullet, the weight of the bullet, the diameter at the base of the bullet, we can put that into a group or class, right? I can say that bullet is a 45 ACP, all right? That is a class. It's a group. It's 45 ACP. It's not 9 millimeter. It's not 22. It's not 5.56. It is 45 ACP. Again, I determine that by the weight, the diameter of the bullet, the base, that kind of thing. So it is, that's a class, all right? So that gets me warm, in other words. I know it's not a 22, so when I go back to the suspect's house, I know I'm not looking for a 9 millimeter or 38. I'm at least looking for a 45, so I'm getting closer. The idea here is I'm narrowing my focus, all right? Talk about that. So the classification can be done by the diameter at the base of the bullet, in other words, the caliber, all right, the weight, the grains, the shape, and the markings on the bullet can all tell us or put that round in a particular class, all right? Now, individual characteristics. This is where you want to get to, okay? This is the unicorn. This is where we want to be. When I get to individualization, okay, I'm no longer saying it's a Glock 45 ACP, right? It's that Glock. It is that Glock right there, all right? So that's kind of what we need to get to. And that's where this kind of the classification and individualization is talking about. Putting it into a group to distinguish it from all others. It's not just a bullet. It's a 45 ACP from a Glock, all right? Narrowing it there. And then now, when I get to individualization, I can say that bullet from that gun, right?
So, from a forensic point of view, are there different types of methodologies, or or is the training always evolving and always changing, or
As far as,
I mean, like going to a crime scene, starting collecting evidence, and knowing what you're looking for, and what's in scope, what's not in scope.
yeah, I think part of what in theory, it should be evolving as science progresses, but in reality, a lot of times it's slower than what you might think or like, because A, it's forensic science, so it's good with the courts, and they don't like change and cutting edge stuff, so you're always hesitant to get on that bleeding edge or forward edge of the change, you know what I mean, because it may be rejected or kicked back because it's new and improved, if that makes sense. So it's slow changing in that regard.
So with respect to that, a lot of the classification and stuff like that is very, it's not a solved problem, but machine learning helps a lot with that. Are you using any of that to help narrow?
AI?
Not specifically AI, but similar, like machine learning specifically, not the AI piece of it.
Not seen that yet. In that context, I mean, one of the the good things about data like that is you can actually automate the process to find stuff and exclude things. So that's cool, and that does work. So we can start, like for example, in the forensic tools, we can sort by file type, we can sort by date range, I can sort by or filter by file extension or custodian, all that stuff. So yes, that makes sense. All right, so the process of individualization is basically reducing that class, all right, that big class of all 45 ACP Glocks down to one member, that Glock. All right, we do that through individualization as far as firearms go, through those lands and grooves, the marks the barrel makes on the projectile as it travels down the barrel. Now, association. What that means is the ability to infer contact. Put that into that kind of group. To infer contact. So, one example here in the analog or the real world, all right, would be at a crime scene. You got a bloody fingerprint, all right. You want to be able to tie that person, that suspect, to that scene, so that fingerprint is able to identify that specific person, all right. And you want to be able to, through that print, tie them to that scene. Well, same thing kind of applies in the digital world, all right. Anybody have a guess on how that might work? What could we use to tie to connect, let's say, a person to a device or a person to a machine, computer? Authentication could be one. Very good. What else? Fingerprints.
Counts on the device itself.
Okay, good. You guys are all right on the money. So to connect that suspect to that laptop, some ways we can do that might be, or connect a suspect to a file. How can we tie a person to a file that was created, modified, or deleted? Can we do that? Sometimes yes, but the problem is, here's one thing a lot of folks don't think about, is computers do a great job of collecting information and all that stuff, but a lot of times the closest we can get through the computer is to a user account, not an actual person. So it's going to get you almost to the 5-yard line, but to say it's an actual person, a lot of that's going to be circumstantial evidence, absent anything like video or something like that, or eyewitness. A lot of times that lasts a little bit. You got to use some old-fashioned gumshoe approach. So we can definitely tie a person to a file, or an account to a file, I should say. We can tie a person to a device, such as a laptop. All right. How would we do that? Well, you may know what that is.
SID.
SID. Very good. SID. So, for example, in the context of a file, Windows will actually track a lot of that activity and track it back to a SID, right, to a specific user account on the system. All right. Another way we can do that to tie someone to a device could be emails sent to and from a particular person on that system. So that's going to make that connection. If there's a ton of email to or from a specific person, that's going to be able to infer that connection we're talking about. Same with the phone, except this time with SMS messages to and from. All right. Definitely do that. Biometric login. Another excellent way. The biometric is going to be able to maybe be able to push us past that 5-yard line, because that's going to be unique enough, right? That's a person. Now, reconstruction, to order the events in the relative space and time based on physical evidence. So, for example, we could do that what's an example in the physical world? What kind of reconstruction do you do in forensics a lot of times?
Automobile.
Yeah, exactly. Automobile reconstruction. Very good. What else? Maybe a shooting where you've got somebody who's been shot. All right. You can actually you've probably seen videos or maybe on TV where they've got a mannequin with the big dowel rods going through it. You can actually put that person based on the trajectory of the bullets in a specific room, standing or lying down, and all that stuff, so you can orient them at a given time when the shooting started, etc., based on the trajectory of the bullets. So we can also do that with digital. Does a great job of that. For example, a timeline. You can actually track all these tools, especially the commercial ones nowadays. I know FTK has it, and I'm pretty sure Incase has got it, where it automatically will produce one of these detailed timelines for you. As far as
what produces that? I'm sorry.
with the commercial suites like Incase or Access Data's FTK, they'll actually give you a timeline of activity on these. If you say, I want to see everything that happened on this machine from this time to this time, they'll plot that out.
Oh, like an executive kind of summary like that?
Right. It'll get, depending on it's granular, so you have more detail or less detail. It kind of filter by just,
Is
I
that
just want to
generally
see.
speaking more of a forensics specialists would have that way?
Probably. I mean,
I just think I really don't know.
yeah, this is a relatively new feature they've added in the last couple of years. But it's extreme. It used to be I could do it by hand. So now a lot of these tools will automatically produce one of these for you. I've not played with it much, so I don't know the quality of it. But even absent the tool, you can still do this very effectively on your own by hand. What? Access Data's Forensic Toolkit, FTK. And then Incase, or guidance software is Incase, E-N-C. E-N-C-A-S-E.
Perfect.
And packet reconstruction. Another example of that. Browser history. Yet another example of reconstruction. Figure out what sites were visited in what order and what frequency. Another Casey Anthony war story. You guys know the browser history, or search history issue with that case. You guys familiar with that? Search for chloroform, exactly right. So what happened was there was another tool. The sheriff's department there was using a tool at the time. It was called Cashback. They've since rebranded it. Well, what happened was they used this tool. They ran this tool on that evidence, and it came back that she searched for or visited this site like 80 some times. All right, now you got to put this in the context of the case. the state had charged her with homicide with exceptional or special circumstances, meaning they wanted to put her to death, right? So they wanted the death penalty for her. And part of that, to get over the hurdle of that, you had to show premeditation, okay? So their theory was that she rendered the child unconscious with chloroform, all right, and then strangled her or whatever. So from the state's perspective, showing that she visited this site or searched for that term 80-some times is a big plus, right, for that premeditation part, right? So they run this tool called Cashback, and it gives them that result that she searched for chloroform 82 times on this website. Well, it just so happened that the person that wrote the tool, that owned the company, was in Florida at the time conducting some training, and those folks were in attendance. They asked him if he would mind looking at the evidence. He said, sure. So in his hotel room that night, he has a forensic image of the device. He starts to run it. He realizes there's a problem in his tool, that it's not reporting right. All right. Long story short is that there was a glitch in the software. The tool said 80, but really what happened was it was 2. Now this is where the he said, she said comes in, is I believe that he said that he notified everybody and told everybody that the first result was wrong, all right, and the prosecution knew that before they presented it to the jury. But what actually happened was that 82 number got testified to, all right, so there was a huge big problem with that. So there was some serious drama surrounding that. And that I'm not sure if that really contributed to the acquittal or not, but it sure didn't help. So what may have been one way to avoid that?
Automated test suites.
Perhaps what close. Use another tool, right? Verify that, validate that result. If that's going to be that important to the case, you should be able to find that with another tool. If you don't, there's a problem, all right? You may be, committing malpractice at best, and actually, sending the innocent person to prison or death, literally. All right, so now let's revisit our forensic hypotheses a little bit. So as far as in the frame of these Inman Rudin paradigm, right? So let's talk about the identification and classification part, all right? So XYZ Corporation travel vouchers will be found on the suspect's computer. So we're going to identify those vouchers. We may be able to know through some interviews what file types those may be in, right? We might see those as PDFs, for example, or maybe Word documents. All right, so we can identify and classify those. Receipts supporting these vouchers will be found on the suspect's computer. So in what form might we find the receipts? Images, so you might look for PNGs, or you might look for PDFs, that kind of stuff, so you got an idea where to look, right? Also, identification and classification. You would find original, unaltered receipts will be found on the suspect's computer. Again, scanned images could be PDFs, could be PNGs, TIFFs, one of those things. Receipts showing the alteration will be found on the suspect's computer. Another example of identification and classification. Association. Software capable of altering those receipts will be located on the suspect's computer. So you want to associate those fraudulent receipts with the computer owned by the suspect, right? Reconstruction. Indications that such software was used, not just installed, but actually used, right, to alter those original receipts. And we're going to find that on the suspect's computer. Another thing those questions can do, in addition to these, all right, you need to think about this at the beginning of that examination plan. On what data are we going to search? All right, where is that data located? Do we have access to that data? Is that data in the cloud? If it's in the cloud, where does it live? Does it live in does it live in this country? All right, the legal process differs and can, from state to state, it can differ dramatically from country to country. And that's where the cloud gets to be problematic. Where is that data? Do I have access to the physical device? Is it in Amazon's cloud, for example? So we may not be able to physically touch it. How does that work? Then we can start looking at the logical location, physical location, the application that was used, data type, time period, the data owner. These are all further ways that we can use to kind of nail down and drill down. You know what we're actually looking for. You can build filters inside of these tools, all right, to kind of isolate the kind of evidence you're looking for based on these characteristics. Then you want to think about how am I going to find the required data? What tools am I going to use? What search strategies? And how will I know that I've got the right data? This is one of those things that we talked about a little while ago about having that information up front. Because a lot of times you're going to be the only ones that's going to go through that evidence with a fine-tooth comb, or close to it, right? So if you don't have all the nuance and the knowledge and the full understanding of what they're actually trying to do with it, you may completely overlook extremely relevant data because you didn't recognize it, because you didn't have all the information that you need. So again, the goal of this talk was to get you to hopefully stop and think about the process you're about to conduct, all right, and do that in a more thoughtful, careful way to produce a more efficient and effective examination, all right, and come to the right conclusions. Be able to leverage what resources and time you've got available to you in the most effective way. Now, this stuff that I've talked about here came from a book I did about 3 years ago. Had a contributor. His name is Mark Pollitt. Mark is a very, very interesting guy. He was the first FBI agent ever designated as a digital forensics person. So he's literally a walking piece of history. He was there from day one, more or less. Super good guy. He's the one that all this stuff is out of his chapter in that book. I think it's extremely important. A lot of it. We all come to these conferences and we all want to jump in there with the tools. We're all tech people, right? We like the tools, we like the widgets. That's the sexy part. I mean, the pressures of the external forces tend to push us into getting that evidence in the door, loading it into software, and to start getting on with that examination and analysis. But not often enough when we put in that thought process up front. And that is where really that short amount of time up front will make your life and your job a lot easier. Working smarter, not harder. Do you have any questions? Yes, sir.
So, I know firefighters get trained in preservation evidence while they're actively fighting fire, like how to, if you can, if all possible. So I'm a system administrator, and I suspect there's something wrong with my system. Somebody is going to have to take a look at and reconstruct the events of it. What should I be doing in the process of also trying to stop what's happening so we don't? What should I be doing to help preserve for somebody like you to be more successful?
Yeah, that's a good question and not an easy answer, because it's sort of a lot of that is context specific as far as what kind of system you're using, hardware and the software. Is there uptime or downtime? Can that system be brought down? Can be brought offline? Can you swap out computers? Is it isolated to just one device, or is it spread across the network? Is it in the cloud? There's lots of those kind of things play into that. There's really no hard and fast rule other than, be aware of the environment, understand that digital evidence is extremely volatile. Okay? By and large, generally, if you think it's going to be a criminal thing or a legal thing, period, change is bad. They'd rather not have you change the evidence. All right. So if you can preserve it in a way that's not been modified or altered or compromised from the time you finally when you collected it, all right, that's awesome. But if you just document what you do, okay, and that's the best advice I could give is document exactly what you did. So that way, if there is some question, you can say, yeah, I did X, Y, and Z, and that may not have any impact on it. You know what I mean? So, like for example, back in the day, on a running machine, law enforcement was always told just yank the plug. Don't even bother powering it down or even think about collecting the RAM. Well, now we know that's a problem because there's a tremendous amount of evidence that only lives in RAM and will never see a disk ever. So as soon as you yank the power, that evidence is gone. So now they're trying to train people up to be able to recognize that A and B, be able to deal with it. So that's a paradigm shift. Because the old thinking was back to this, change is bad. Forensic science is kind of, because again, it's married to that whole legal system, right? They hate change, they hate ambiguity, so the change is bad. So the thought was just yank the plug that way, everything is stopped, cold, dead, nothing. But the problem is you lose the RAM, you can compromise the evidence, you could corrupt the disk, corrupt the files, all kinds of bad things can happen. So it's starting to change that a little bit. It's taken years to kind of turn the ship in that direction. But that wasn't really quite the clear answer.
No, I think you hit it on a big part is record what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a command history that I've done. There's also audit logs, which just be cognizant that.
Exactly.
Have you ever seen anybody pulled in to testify as to what they did on the system from a?
Good, absolutely, because I've done a lot of civil stuff where that action may or may not, or at least the other side, one side of it, or the other may think that what you did was relevant to help their case or hurt. You know what I mean? So they call you and it may be an argument they're going to have. There may be no clear-cut black or white answer to what you did and the impact of that. Maybe one of those things. So again, the documentation that you do, recognizing you've got an issue is a huge part of it. So that's a giant step, right? And the documentation, screenshots, record and document as much as you can do. And you can get that data offline into a way that's preserved, all the better. So, but sometimes that's just not possible because that system has to be up, whatever else. If you're going to try to collect it, if you think it's going to go to court, first thing I would say is contact a lawyer. Some companies, I don't know if you guys have in-house counsel or you've got somebody else or hire them when you need them, but get them involved right out of the gate because they're the ones ultimately have got to fight this thing. So a lot of times they'll want to be kept up to speed. And some of the, I've seen it where the decisions that you make, they're going to want to have a say because they either are in agreement with you or that's just too risky for them or whatever else from a legal strategy position. Yeah, so involve the lawyers are meeting with them. Anybody else?
Actually, one more.
Oh, sure.
Encryption. It's a much bigger thing. But I like having the devil on my side. But what are you guys actually doing about that? I mean, it's not going to be a thing. It's not going to happen. It's very unlikely we're going to backdoors and everything. So how do you deal with that?
Well, a lot of prayers, sleepless nights. Like I said, forensically, from the good guy perspective, it's a problem because there's just physically the issue is. And again, I'm going to hop on my soapbox here a little bit as a former cop, but you're creating a warrant safe place that there is. This whole country is founded on laws. It'd be like if you had a house that nobody could ever get into ever, no matter what they had. There's no alternative. You know what I mean? For example, one case I had way back in the day, I had to get into a safe deposit box and a search warrant. The judge told me it was okay, so I go to the bank. They tell me, gosh, no, you can't get in the box because you're not the owner, you don't have a key. I'm the police, I've got the warrant. I said, no, we can't do that without the owner. I'm like, well, yeah, you can. This is what the judge says. So I entertained them for a little bit while they contacted the bosses and the boss's boss and the boss's boss's boss. About an hour and a half into this, I'm about done. You know what I mean? So I had an alternative. I told them that I'm going to go get the city garage and get their jackhammer. I'm going to hammer this box open because I've got a legal process to do that. With encryption, there's no option. There's no other way around it. That's gone. There's no physical way for us to overcome it. So in essence, you created this place where there is no law. And I think that's a dangerous place. I see the point of having the encryption and the value of it, but there's a double-edged sword. Yeah, like England, for example, has already decided on this, and they kind of want to compel you as an option on the user. But once I've got a legal process to get that data, you've got to unlock it, or you're going to sit in the jail until you do. So that's how they do it.
Well, look at them. Well, I mean, just from the other side of that, because I think we fall probably on different sides of that argument, because I understand if it was my job, I had a badge, and if somebody is a hostage, and I've got to get into this. Well, hell, no, there's no way in hell I can get into it. But at the same time, I look at cases where you look at like authoritative regimes, like in countries like Brazil, where you don't have encrypted transmissions for people to be able to discuss something with each other. They just show up and go, "Oh, you're from the alternative political viewpoint," and they shoot you in the face.
Sure.
I mean, it's like Shakespeare said, "A thing is not evil; it's thinking that makes it so." You know, it's
right.
I don't know. I felt uncomfortable, especially after seeing the Edward Snowden thing. The stuff like it's just like on a smaller scale, like the Stingray. I mean, the companies that were the false towers they used to intercept cell phone calls. They've seen instances where when the company sells it to a police department, they sign non-disclosure agreements. Some of those things have gotten out where they were using it, and they say, well, okay, we're only going to use it for life and death situations, but there were cases where petty theft, and they were firing that thing up and using stuff. And I understand that I'm trying to, I don't want to paint too broad a brush. You know, I think there's arguments on either side of that coin, because I don't trust. Ultimately, what it comes down to is I don't trust people. And whereas some people are going to do the right thing and abide by the rules, some people are going to abuse that. I guess on both sides of that argument, you know.
Right.
So I don't know. I just
it's a murky spot. It's got
there's no right answer.
It's interesting you bring up England, because I believe it's Philly right now. There is a cop sitting in jail that must decrypt a hard drive in order to get out of jail, and I believe the way they're currently playing this is his defense lawyer believes that there probably is evidence on there that would incriminate him, and they're playing that he would rather sit in jail on that, he's more likely to get out of jail on failure to violate judge's orders, than to actually unlock and reveal what's in that.
Sure. See, that's been kind of decided. There's case law out there that trying to compel someone to give up the password is a violation of someone's Fifth Amendment rights against self-incrimination.
Yeah, I was going to ask how they were addressing it.
Yeah, so I've seen it both directions. We saw a case come through the lab down there. It's been a couple of years ago where a West Virginia judge ordered somebody to give up their password. Like, yeehaw, that's probably it's going to get appealed. You're going to lose. So,
but my understanding is like, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Well, like, so I've got a cell phone. If I'm going to use passcode, I cannot necessarily be compelled to provide the passcode. However, if I'm using a voice activation biometric, they can compel.
Right.
So, I mean, that's one thing to consider. I mean, I'm always a little bit. I think I love the country I live in, and I don't take it for granted because I served in the military. I wouldn't live anywhere else. But historically speaking, things happen, things change, and I see. I spent the stuff with the NSA, I look at some of the mass surveillance, and I forget the name of the legislation they passed. They basically said we're going to survey everybody. And the thing is, the scales of the surveillance, and I realize they don't disclose everything to us, but it really is it worth, I guess, how much is our security, I understand security is, but do we want to give up all of our privacy for the sake of preventing one crime? How many crimes? It's like when he was talking about before, when you had in the keynote this morning, he's talking about the cost associated with what kind of crimes you're preventing. You have to achieve that. Yeah, we can prevent all crimes if we want to live in kind of a what was the Tom Cruise prevented recon or whatever. Yeah. I mean, if everybody is, it's kind of like saying there's a neighborhood with 1,000 houses in it. I think there's going to be a crime committed in one of those houses. I want to keep everybody's house. I mean, I don't.
We can scope this a little bit more. This is actually something I mentioned. San Bernardino, one of the problems I have with that was a government phone. Have you seen any law requiring government agencies to keep keys in escrow? Now that not only you have encrypted and that you should, but that you actually, if that had been financial crime, how would they have gotten into that phone?
Well, that goes back to whose phone, who owns it. Was there, for example, a simple use policy signed that said, hey, we're going to let you have this phone from the Capital County Board of Health, but understand that we own the phone and it's subject to being searched and taken all the data that lives on this phone.
It's not your phone.
Yeah, and once that's in place, then I think it's flipped. So it's a personal phone that gets part of it.
One of the big things on the horizon, a lot of people are been talking about one completely change everything in the sense that it would make what's now not feasible by terms of brute force hacking a password, fire on a computer, and I mean now it's very feasible. And that's a little scary because now you have
It's much more game with that because what it does is actually have to the midlife for the security. It doesn't actually gain it. So if you're using a strong enough security bits of encryption, quantum isn't going to break it. It's like secure until the heat at the end of the universe kind of levels of energy required to break some of this encryption.
Well, now it is. I mean, that's the thing. Right now, it's completely, I mean, it's essentially impossible. But I mean, that's the thing. What about that? What's that going to what kind of encryption will it negate?
Yeah.
But I think the cork in the bottle is that legal judicial intercession. You know what I mean? That you can't get access to that data without a court order signed by a judge, and you've got to reason met by a legal standard to get into it.
Sure.
So that I think is what separates the. Now you're talking about you've got there are human beings involved in that.
Right.
And that process may be wrongfully used, and those people should be hammered.
Right.
But we're already trusting folks with our data anyway. Some of them, you know what I mean? So it's sort of like that's no easy answer. That's what I mean.
Right.
There's valid arguments on both sides of it. I understand that you can't, there cannot be a back door, because otherwise it's not scary. There's a back door.
Right. Well, see, they were talking about that too. You get to fill a job, right? You open it up, three applicants come in, and one of them walks on water, and you go, oh my God, this guy's amazing. He's not really working. And he comes in, whatever, he has a couple of lines of code, nobody knows about whatever. And now there's a back door into like mainstream encryption. That gets out. You see how the industry is going to go. I tend to, I guess I'm a little more of I fall a little more on the other side of the argument. But I realize there's legitimate, I mean, there's no right answer. It's just, but I think those are questions, especially when it comes to civil liberties. That's a one-way street. If you give up the civil liberty, the government never goes, hey, listen, we've been too much. We're going to relax. We're going to give you that privacy back. We're going to relinquish it. That very, very rarely happens. And if you look at it historically, you look at other countries and you look at what happens in like countries like China, Brazil, Saudi Arabia. I mean, that could happen here. I mean, I'm not saying that we're going to be like that, but I'm just saying it's just I think this question should be weighed very carefully.
Yes, sir.
I was just going to comment on the quantum because I spoke at ShmooCon on quantum computing. So pretty much once that's online and available in the masses, most encryption, as you know, is pretty much API. They are looking at lattice cryptography now, but none of that is to the point where it's usable. So once it is online, quantum will be able to, it'll be good. So I just wanted to add that since I did a research on it.
Good deal. Anybody else? All right, that's all I got for today. I'll be back here tomorrow and get to do vehicle forensics. So.
All right, if you're done, can I ask one more forensic question?
Sure.
How, as a teacher, are you teaching low-card principle in relation to digital evidence, or is that pretty much when you get a sale on the ground?
No, 100%. We excuse me, we talk about that in probably 2 or 3 different classes.
But you do feel that it's applicable.
Oh, 100%.
Okay. I was wondering how that was being, especially when you were talking about time.
Yeah, absolutely. Specific. Logins, all kinds of stuff. Registry keys. There's lots of things that qualify for network connections, obviously. That kind of stuff. So there's going to be some sort of virtual transfer.
So it's still good moving forward.
I think so.
Okay, good.
You did it last year.
So if you're going to sell a device also,
You're going to sell it?
It makes sense. It's much like e-school or something.
It's on a lot of times it's on the tool and also on the person using it.
No.
White and it's really
West
white.
Virginia.
So the general whiting stuff will make it probably inaccessible to most people.
There's a very large
Forensic
state
tool.
rivalry.
So I know what they're doing.
Huge state
There's
rivalry.
probably not a lot out there that is totally
prevalent.
100%.
No.
I'll take that.
We're way too close to
Very
IT.
deep
You can't
pockets.
play
And
Oh, I
the
can't.
colleges right here training. Or be able to hire somebody with training tools. Some of that shit may be but by and large, you can sell it, wipe it at one
You
day.
just buy it.
Most people.
And why do you have more money? Because the legislature.
Depends on, well, yes and no. I mean, a lot of times if you're just resetting the data, a lot of times some of
that data is probably going to remain. It's like reformatting your drive while you're really doing it. Reset the file system. So a lot of the data may be there.
How wasn't that annoying?
So,
What was the case annoying?
My wife just said I've gotten much more annoying.
depends on the version. Depends on and all that stuff. The newer ones, yeah, the newer ones are much harder to get into, much harder and all that stuff.
So what were you saying? What's your bottom line? What do you think is going to happen? How do you our ability to do the hardware?
I'm hesitant to really say, excuse me, I'm hesitant to say,
Shot one, right?
because they're all exceptions. Because, you know, it depends on somebody's got deep pockets. You know, say from, you know, folks here is one thing, say from the NSA is another. There's companies out there like Drive Saver Control that actually do this service. So if you've got enough money, you can write them a check and all that. A lot of it blown up and smashed or everything else. Some data
Well, no,
off.
it affected, it's actually brought attention to why I started this encryption.
Josh is the mobile version.
I'm sorry, I'm sure you hear that.
Stuff like that. Josh is.
What you're talking about?
It's on music. It's not really numbers from the Don't worry about it. That's a fancy way to say why
I didn't.
it sounds
I was dissuaded from
Sure.
digital forensics and want to look at child porn on a regular basis. At this point in the industry now, that it's more of
A lot more context than CP.
there's a lot more to do now than if. What other options are there now that are not even specifically law enforcement? I want to
Yeah, sure, there's all kinds.
There are
Using obviously the criminal context, so that doesn't include CP.
There
Civil litigation is a multi-billion-dollar a year business, just supporting civil litigation, so suits and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
There are companies out there that provide digital forensic services to law firms and clients just in response to civil litigation.
Okay.
So that's one option. There's another option, the intelligence community, private sector like Target, Walmart, Best Buy, Apple. Yeah, all those companies and other ones have digital forensic folks in house. Those folks primarily do incident response. One part of their job, the other part would be possibly investigating, inappropriate use, violations of company policy, that kind of stuff. The military uses forensics all the time. On the battlefield now, they're all grabbing up, not only the terrorists, but also anything that's got ones and zeros on it. So that kind of stuff. So there's lots of different options. Yeah, so I would not be dissuaded anymore.
Okay. At one point, most of the discussion I had about this earlier, you realize what the audience is right now because there's so few people.
Awesome pen test.
It's horrible stuff. I mean, once you see it, and that's where I come out of the whole encryption thing, is once you see literally the horrible, monstrous stuff people do to kids, you'll never be the same. And that's why it's hard for me to say, yeah, you can have that phone that I can never get in and know because pictures of somebody's kid in there is being literally tortured. And that person is going to be able to walk around with that in their pocket because nobody can touch it. That's what I can't do.
I tend to agree you can't pass the door, but that is where I think like the Fifth Amendment right. I think the whole point of, for me, the whole point of our judicial system is specifically to compel you in that specific instance. But I also look at it a lot like guns. Encryption is out there. The bad guys are going to use it whether you want them to or not. Just because, so to me, like the idea of putting a backdoor in there is unrealistic for that reason. So now what can you do from a civil and criminal litigation perspective?
Tough. There's no easy answer. It's one of those deals where it's almost an idea, a rough idea. We say, yeah, if you want to use it, that's fine, but you got to understand that if we present you with a valid warrant, you got to give it up, or you go to jail.
Yeah. And I think that's where we are now, isn't it? Like that's
not necessarily, no, because
that's what
the courts are saying that you can't compel someone to give up anything in their mind, because that's self-incrimination. So that's what they're saying. So that's where if it's a biometric, like he said, if it's a retina scan, thumbprint, that's all in bounds. But the speech and thought is what's protected.
Now, is it in bounds for me? I get pulled over at traffic stop. Is it in bounds for the cop to direct me to use my thumbprint to unlock the phone, or does he have to get a warrant, or does she have to get a warrant for me to be compelled to use?
It's probably going to depend on the state. I don't know. Not sure on that.
Okay.
a lot of that stuff.
I know a lot of it's new, and that's
Yeah, it
makes
is.
hard.
It's going to be, you know, what maybe happened at 3 o'clock in the morning. I give them a thumbprint because they may not be happy with it. Or you may go to jail. You make it out, they may dismiss the charges, but 3 o'clock in the morning is not the time to argue.
You know, I mean, it's just like, at all, do you?
Yeah, I don't have an answer on that one. I don't know what the law is as far as what they can ask you to do on the spot. I don't know. Sure. Josh, do you know?
What's that?
Can a law enforcement officer compel you to enter your biometric code on a phone on a traffic stop?
But don't say the A word or people like
I don't think they've even had any litigation that came through that.
So they still have a chance of being said.
Well,
They're referring to that Supreme Court case, and they're kind of putting all the mobile phones under that blanket to where they can't compel the person to, unless the person is incapacitated or deceased. So you literally have cops that are going into the morgue, taking a person's fingerprint and putting it on a phone and authenticating that way. Or if the person's unconscious, they're doing that as well. But you're going to see that make it to the Supreme Court, and they're going to put it under 2015, whatever that case was.
I'm going to talk very generically here. There's no way you can know the answer to this, but do you see a case where somebody gets arrested and they're forced, like, that somebody's, like, if I'm arrested, I have my hands cuffed behind me, what stops you from walking up behind me with my phone, putting my thumb to it, and unlocking that phone? Do you see that?
I don't see any case in this mainland United States that would hold up in court if a law enforcement officer compels a person to put their print to the phone if they have a lawyer that's worth their weight in gold without a search warrant.
You think that's at that point a search warrant?
Anything involving mobile device should be a search warrant.
Just way too much personal stuff.
Unless it's publicly available information. Just after 2015, that's what the Supreme Court, they basically just made the statement. This is not public information. This is not something that you can just use as search incident to arrest and turn the phone over to law enforcement. Even if we seize the phone in a valid arrest, we still have to get a search warrant. So it's shaky ground. I would never search a phone without.
Do you think they lock that down as far as saying mobile phone, or do you think like now we start getting Internet of Things, so now it's a watch that it's a lot more capable? Do you see them expanding that, or? I know this is all really hard.
A lot of that depends on how technologically apt these judges are and how much they understand. To me, this is just as valuable as this because I have my messages coming through that. The court says, "Oh, this is a watch. It's not protected like this." To me, I'm arrested. This should be protected just as much as that, and just as much as this laptop. It should all be protected. And the reason I say that is because if I can get, as a law enforcement officer, I'm covering my butt with valid search authority, number one. Number two, that puts a kind of a checks and balances in place that when you put that before a judge.
Yes, it's all in Huntington right now. We're looking at launching our master's degree in the fall, and that's going to be online.
And there's cases where we've taken where the judge is like,
yeah, but right now it's all live in class.
You don't need it.
Yeah.
One of the challenges we've got with that is trying to find the hands-on is such an important part of that.
In a lot of ways,
In our lab, and for example, the forensic software is so expensive, you're never going to be able to buy your own copy of that. It's like $6 grand a pop, So nobody's going to buy that. So, we're able to provide you with those tools. Part of the tuition to be able to get
I agree with you. Like,
certified in the use of those tools, which are going to make
I'm
it
not
marketable.
willing to give up.
It'd be a commute, but I think it'd probably be worth your time to do it in person. Because right now we just can't replicate that lab experience.
I know it's fantastic. I know it's cost.
Yeah.
Judgment. I didn't
Unfortunately.
as much.
Yeah, it'd be rough. It would be rough for sure. There's, like I said, there'd be at some point, maybe down the road, we might look at something like that. But right now, there's just 3 of us. We already have 100 students, and it's not going to
That's
stop.
where the courts are going.
It's probably going to get worse. So if we get some time, we'd like to be able to put that on the line. But like I said, one of the challenges is to be able to port that lab experience over to remote part. So there are some certain platforms from like cyberwatch.org we're looking at that might be able to host it in a virtualized way. All you need is a browser that you can actually interact with stuff and do things.
Because when I work in the lab, everything
beyond what we can do with Marshall and Marshall.
And that might be a good substitute, but we're just not there yet. So do what? Any additional search.
Yeah, we're working on articulation agreements between community colleges where you can go like 2 years at Bridge Valley and then transfer the last 2 at Marshall.
And there's still cops ringing.
Yeah, so that's something we're working on. So if you're looking at Bridge Valley, is definitely on the radar. Is that the one you'd probably be interested in? That'd be the closest one. Yeah, we don't have that specific one yet, but it's coming. I can tell you, I can see that happening in the spring. But if you get down to Huntington, you want to tour the place, or we're in the brand new Weisberg Applied Engineering Building. It's a brand new $55 million palace down there, so it's nice. Like I said, it's a good deal. We started out with only like a lab or teaching space with 12 seats. Now we got 24. We've got a pretty good, a lot of good stuff down there. So it's yeah. So just holler at us if you're interested. We also have a conference coming up in the 3rd or 4th week in April. It's our conference down there. It'll be a lot like this, but it's 5 days long. We'll bring in a lot of speakers from DEF CON, Black Hat. We have folks from the FBI sometimes. We have Purdue. So we try to bring in a good amount of training in there. It's like $60. Yeah, so it's well worth doing. Thank you. You're welcome.
To violate other laws books. So I think the court's safe tone is going to be, does it have telemetry, biometry, does it have pass any information that would identify a particular person? If it does,
and perhaps this is more, since that court case, have you known of any court cases where evidence has been thrown out specifically because they obtained evidence and it turned out that it was not obtained through a search warrant for that?
I don't know the specific case. So that's going to be like certain some that you may not hear about in the news because it never made it through discovery. You know, they did the analysis, but it wasn't seized properly. So
and my daughter's so funny because I'll put a slide together and I have that passed.
Yeah, no, this is very interesting. Thank you, by the way. I appreciate it.
Happy to do it. Anytime.
Thank goodness it was
There's
but my daughter was sitting.
Thank you very much for the talk.
And then she was looking at the slide and she leapt up and she ran up onto the stage. And I was like, what are you doing? And she's like,
Well, I'll do that clicker.
I could, if I could figure out a way to leave it here, I can. What time do you have to be here in the morning?
We'll check that one. That's a very good question.
Tell me, I can make sure I can get that.
and I'm like, next slide. But it was funny because it was so small on my screen when I was doing the slides with her because she actually checks my slides to check me. And because it's fun doing with kids.
I'm on a 10.
I can be here at 10.
We didn't see it.
Sure.
When it's blown up on a screen that size, it's like, ah!
Yeah, I can't say how
Connected.
I gave you your switch back.
Yeah.
How
that cables. Take all the evidence.
Get that crap written first. That's all right.
I'll
go.
But eventually, we got together and I got it. Yeah. But I mean, but I'm looking at that. How to sense of curiosity. That's
what the gentleman that searching to the she came in and my dad.
Like I do, sometimes it's hard because we were really hard before the internet, but I don't remember the time when we were YouTube, but I'm like, I'm trying to change this thing in my car.
Yes! I actually have one of those pictures of like an old like 50s flash order, and it says be nice so you can cut your parents they passed school without the internet.
Yes. 100%.
No, I'm just gonna support this thing. I have no plan
I'm gonna.
Yeah.
I just think I haven't done that.
Yeah.
It's a gift. It's a gift. I don't think so. What is the, what's the governor?
Like the smarter I get, the stupider I get.
Yeah, all day long. Yeah, I don't know that for me.
I tell you what, it's
I'm looking at it, okay, I would love to do this. I find but it's
the nice thing is they have things now that I'm not
absolutely.
like we have co-ops.
So, Josh, what's going on?
Right,
This big presentation you got?
No.
where different people let's say I just understand it, I get it. But there's another parent who's house. That parent doesn't teach chemistry. You know, like I'm teaching in January, I'm actually teaching introduction because I taught these pretty much cybersecurity. So I said, okay, I'm going to teach the same thing. But you guys don't have to. So in January, I'm teaching and I'm basically going to do an entire OSI model and do a layer each week, and then, you know, and that's the thing is there's parents out there like, I'm going to go and do it, so the kids that want that information, but that's the nice thing about co-ops is you get all those parents together. So there's one woman who's teach it, and then there's another parent who does the same thing. There's a woman who does sign language. She teaches a sign language class, and then there's women that come in and parents will come in and teach oral, and teach tenses, and the list of classes my daughter has taken, she's not very good at she has done all of the she right now is taking forensics. She's taking psychology, she's taking another class because there's she's done there's
Kind of new. I mean, it's not that. We've been around for like 6 years.
make a girl chase like actually feature yourself of trying to be outside. Just do basic
That's what it's terrific that you got pictures for schools.
But you can't tie your shoes and make it
Right. You can't do your own laundry. You take it around when we have problems.
Oh, awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. Some of the underlying right. Over.
Yeah, that was.
Trying to find that balance.
What's the next topic? Oh, it's been canceled. Josh has exclusive diarrhea and will not be able to give the talk. I'm kidding.
Is there a GoFundMe?
Yes.
Oh, I hope so. That'd be a beautiful talk.
John Walsh has a video. Is that what you're recommending? One of the videos? He's being an ass.
It's right around like when they start losing to recognize themselves.
Okay. Right. I don't want to saddle you
Parents
up.
struggle with that.
I don't want to saddle you up with my own shit.
I can just show you
Yeah, I'm sure.
and just say, like, hey, this has to be.
He was so bad.
And as she gets older, as he gets older,
He can be a little.
It's nice. It's just a matter of
and so I let her and she accepted it. She's like, how much is I said, to an extent, I will let you get one.
You're probably right.
Sure.
I said, I'll draw them.
Like more accurate.
But if it's a low middle cut or merge, I'll let you get one. But since then, there have been multiple times where I've said, well, I'm going to try to haven't forgotten. I want to think, I said, you do this, but you want to think about this.
Yeah, I'm getting ready to start. I was just waiting on that. What about you?
Oh, no one stopped the recording either.